The phone felt heavier in my hand, like her words had somehow added weight to the very air I was breathing. I let out a dry laugh, but it came out strained, more like a bark than anything else. Explore other options? Mom, what are you even saying? Her response was unnervingly calm, almost clinical, as if she were explaining the merits of a new recipe. Look, sweetheart, I love you. You know I do. But I also love Emily, and I see things that maybe you don't. She's vibrant. She's ambitious. She deserves someone who matches that. Her words struck like a slap, though she said them with no malice. My free hand clenched into a fist at my side. What the hell is happening? So you're saying I don't match her? That I'm not good enough for my own wife? That's not what I'm saying, she said quickly, though her tone suggested otherwise. It's just, sometimes I think she's holding back because of you. If she were with someone else, someone more established maybe, she could flourish. The audacity of it all churned in my stomach, a sour bile that rose with every passing second. I could feel my pulse throbbing in my temple. Do you even hear yourself right now? You're suggesting my wife cheat on me. Are you serious? I'm suggesting you let her grow, she replied, her voice unyielding, like this was some bizarre act of motherly love. Sometimes love means letting go. I know this sounds harsh, but think about what's best for both of you. I couldn't process it. My own mother, my mother, was advocating for the dissolution of my marriage, not because she didn't like Emily, but because she thought I wasn't enough. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the words caught in my throat. All I could muster was a low, shaky exhale. Are you still there? She asked after a moment. I'm here, I said through gritted teeth. My mind was spinning, every word she'd spoken replaying like a bad song on repeat. Mom, you don't get to decide what's best for my marriage. That's between me and Emily. Her sigh crackled through the phone. I'm just trying to help. I see how much you love her, but love isn't always enough. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My chest felt tight, my breathing shallow. You're way out of line, I said, my voice trembling with restrained anger. This conversation is over. Wait, please! I hung up. My hand hovered over the phone as if expecting it to ring again, but it didn't. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. Later that evening, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at Emily as she brushed her hair by the mirror. She looked radiant, her movements effortless, completely unaware of the storm that had brewed between my mother and me. Should I tell her? Would she even believe me? The thought of saying the words out loud felt like swallowing broken glass. How do you even begin a conversation like that? I rubbed my hands over my face, trying to shake off the lingering anger and disbelief, but the question gnawed at me, refusing to be ignored. As I sat there, the weight of the day pressed against my chest like an iron bar. Emily moved gracefully, unaware of the storm raging within me. Every small movement, her fingers threading through her hair, the gentle tilt of her head, seemed to amplify my turmoil. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, and let my hands dangle between them. The words my mother had spoken replayed like a sinister echo, each one more cutting than the last. You should let her explore. Someone who can give her what you can't. The anger that had flared earlier had cooled now, replaced by something darker. Doubt. What if she's right? The thought hit like a blow to the gut. I closed my eyes, trying to shake it off, but it clung to me like a shadow. Emily turned then, catching my reflection in the mirror. Her expression softened as she noticed my posture. You okay? She asked, her voice gentle, concerned. Yeah, I lied, forcing a smile. Just a lot on my mind. She stood, crossing the room in a few quick steps, and perched beside me on the bed. Her warmth was immediate, her presence grounding. She reached out, her hand resting lightly on my forearm. "What's going on?" Her touch was reassuring, but it also sent a pang of guilt through me. Should I tell her? My mother's words replayed again, this time tangled with memories of Emily and me, our first date, the way her laughter had felt like sunlight, the vows we'd exchanged on our wedding day. She deserves more. She deserves someone who matches her ambition. I took a breath, trying to steady myself, but the knot in my chest only tightened. What would Emily think if I told her? Would she laugh at the absurdity? Or would she hesitate? A flicker of truth in her eyes that I wasn't ready to see? Her hand slid down to mine, her fingers lacing between my own. "You're scaring me a little," she said softly. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. Just talk to me." I looked at her then, really looked at her. Her eyes, wide and earnest, searched mine for answers. Her lips pressed into a soft line betraying her worry. She deserved honesty, didn't she? But how could I give her that when I wasn't sure of the answers myself? If I tell her, I risk planting a seed of doubt where there was none. My mother's words, no matter how absurd, had the power to linger. But if I don't, I'll carry this alone, and it'll eat away at me. I felt the sting of unshed tears, a tightness in my throat. Why did Mom do this? Why now? I thought of all the times Emily and my mother had laughed together, the ease of their relationship. It had always been one of the things I'd cherished most. And now, this. Emily squeezed my hand gently, pulling me back to the present. "Whatever it is, I love you," she said. The words were simple but heavy with meaning, and for a moment, they silenced the storm inside me. I squeezed her hand back, forcing a small smile. "I love you too," I said, my voice quiet, uncertain. The silence between us stretched, comfortable yet charged. What should I do? I thought, my mind spinning, with possibilities. Do I shield her from this, or do I risk everything by telling her the truth? The next morning, the gnawing sense of unease was still there, coiled like a serpent in the pit of my stomach. My mother's words, absurd as they seemed, had rooted themselves in my mind, refusing to let go. As Emily moved about the kitchen, humming softly while pouring coffee, I studied her. Every little movement seemed too perfect, too effortless. It was ridiculous. I knew it was. But doubt had a way of twisting the ordinary into something sinister. Was there a hint of distance in her smile? Was her laugh just a little too light? I shook my head, trying to dispel the paranoia. She hasn't done anything to deserve this. Mom's the one who planted the idea, not Emily. But the seed had been sown, and now I couldn't stop watching, analyzing, questioning. By the time Emily left for work, I was no closer to finding clarity. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at her empty coffee cup. My mother's voice echoed in my mind. She deserves someone who matches her ambition. It wasn't like Emily to give me a reason to doubt her. She'd always been affectionate, supportive, present. But what if there were things I didn't see? People hide entire worlds behind their smiles. The thought sent a cold shiver down my spine. I pulled out my phone, hesitating before typing her name into a search bar. Her social media accounts were pristine, as always. Pictures of us, posts about her work, snapshots of our dog. But as I scrolled, a creeping anxiety settled in. It wasn't enough. If she's hiding something, she wouldn't post it online. Over the next few days, my mind became a battlefield. I didn't want to be the kind of husband who doubted his wife without reason, but the idea wouldn't let me rest. I started paying closer attention. Too close. When she left the room, I found myself glancing at her phone, at her laptop, though I never had the nerve to touch them. At night, When she fell asleep beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. What am I doing? I thought. This isn't me. This isn't us. But the questions kept coming, relentless as waves against a crumbling shore. Did she seem distracted during dinner? Was that text notification just a friend or something more? My chest tightened at the thought, guilt and suspicion tangling in an unholy knot. The tipping point came one evening when she was in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen lighting up with a name I didn't recognize. Nathan. I froze, staring at the screen as if it were a live grenade. My pulse pounded in my ears. Who the hell is Nathan? The notification faded before I could read more. My hands trembled as I reached for the phone, my mind racing with possibilities. Was it a coworker? A friend? Something else entirely? I picked it up, my thumb hovering over the screen. The lock screen stared back at me, silent and unyielding. Do I really want to go down this road? The question burned in my mind, but I already knew the answer. I stared at Emily's phone, the screen now dark, a quiet accusation in its stillness. My pulse thundered in my ears as I debated my next move. This could be nothing. It could be innocent. Or it could be exactly what I fear. With a deep breath, I pressed the side button. The screen lit up again, the lock demanding a code I didn't know. I set the phone down as if it had burned me. You don't do this. You don't go behind her back, I told myself. But the name Nathan lingered in my mind, sharp and taunting. The shower shut off. The sound of the water gave way to the rustling of towels. I quickly placed the phone back on the nightstand and moved to the living room, trying to look casual. My heart raced as I heard her footsteps. She entered, her hair damp, wearing the oversized sweatshirt she always wore after a shower. She smiled when she saw me. Hey, you okay? You seem off. Yeah, just tired, I said, forcing a smile. My voice felt hollow even to me. She walked over and kissed my cheek, her scent a mix of soap and lavender. Don't stay up too late, she said softly before heading to bed. I watched her go, my stomach a knot of guilt and suspicion. She's probably just being friendly. Nathan could be anyone, I thought, trying to convince myself. But the seed of doubt had grown roots, and I knew I wouldn't rest until I had answers. The next day, while Emily was at work, I decided to investigate further. I opened her laptop, feeling the weight of my actions pressing against my chest. The login screen greeted me, and for a moment I felt a pang of relief. It was locked. Maybe this is a sign to stop, I thought. But I didn't stop. Instead, I focused, on the phone. I waited for an opportunity, rehearsing my excuses in case she caught me. That chance came when she left for a yoga class that evening, her phone charging on the counter. I approached it like it was a sleeping beast, my heart pounding with every step. My hands trembled as I picked it up again. This time, I was ready. I typed in her birth date, denied. I tried our wedding date, denied again. Frustration bubbled up, but then I remembered her mother's birthday. It was a long shot, but click. The screen unlocked. I felt a strange mix of triumph and dread as I opened her messages. My eyes scanned the list of names, looking for Nathan. There it was, near the top. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the thread. What if this destroys everything? But the pull of curiosity and fear was stronger. I tapped the name. The conversation wasn't long, but it was enough to make my stomach drop. Messages about missing our talks and catching up soon filled the screen. Then, one from Nathan. I can't stop thinking about last time. When can we meet again? I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My vision blurred as I stared at the words. Last time? Meet again? Footsteps outside the door snapped. Me out of my daze. Emily was home. I quickly locked the phone and placed it back on the counter, moving to the living room as casually as I could manage. My heart hammered in my chest as she entered, her face glowing from the cold air outside. "Yoga was great," she said, setting her bag down. "What did you do while I was gone?" I forced a smile, my mouth dry. "Just relaxed." Her eyes lingered on me for a moment, her brow furrowing slightly. "You sure you're okay? You've been acting weird all week." "I'm fine," I said quickly, too quickly. She didn't push, but her expression didn't ease. She kissed my forehead and headed to the kitchen, leaving me alone with the weight of what I'd found. What now? The question loomed over me like a storm cloud. Do I confront her? Do I wait for more proof? Or do I let it go and pretend this never happened? That night, as Emily lay beside me, her breathing soft and steady in the rhythm of sleep, I stared at the ceiling, my mind an endless loop of questions and doubts. Her phone sat on the nightstand, an unspoken challenge, daring me to act. Do I let this fester, or do I confront her now while the fire in me still burns? I turned toward her, watching her in the dim light. Her hair fell across her face, her lips slightly parted. She looked peaceful, innocent even. And for a moment, I felt like the villain in my own story. But those messages, those words, I couldn't bury it any longer. I sat up, careful not to startle her, and gently shook her shoulder. "Emily," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Wake up." She stirred, groaning softly as she turned toward me. "What's wrong?" she mumbled, her eyes half open, still heavy with sleep. I hesitated, my pulse racing. "We need to talk." That got her attention. Her eyes opened fully now, and she propped herself up on one elbow, squinting at me. "What's going on? It's the middle of the night." "I found something," I said, my voice trembling despite my effort to stay calm. "On your phone." Her expression shifted immediately, from confusion to something else. Wariness. "You went through my phone?" I didn't mean to. I lied, though it sounded weak even to me. But I saw a message from Nathan. Her body stiffened, and she sat up fully, the blankets pooling around her waist. "You went through my phone?" she repeated, her voice sharp now, cutting through the quiet like glass shattering. "That's what you're focusing on?" I shot back, my anger flaring. "Not the messages? Not what he said about last time and meeting again?" Her face flushed, and she looked away, her jaw tightening. "I can't believe you did that," she said, her voice quieter but no less biting. "I trusted you. And I trusted you." The words exploded out of me, the dam breaking. "So, what is it, Emily? What's going on between you and Nathan?" For a long moment, she said nothing. Her silence was deafening, a void that swallowed every ounce of hope I had left. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders slumping. "He's just a friend," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's nothing, really." "Nothing?" I repeated, incredulous. "Then why is he talking about last time? Why does it sound like you've been meeting him behind my back?" She looked at me then, her eyes glossy with unshed tears. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" My voice broke, a mix of anger and despair. "That's not good enough, Emily. You owe me the truth." Her hands twisted in the blanket, her fingers pale from the pressure. "We've been talking," she admitted finally. "He's someone I knew before we got together. It was just nice to catch up." "Catching up doesn't involve secret meetings and messages about not being able to stop thinking about each other," I said, my voice trembling. "Do you have feelings for him?" Her silence stretched again, a chasm growing between us. And then, finally, "I don't know." The words hit like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of me. "You don't know?" I echoed, my voice cracking. "What does that mean, Emily? Are you in love with him? Are you thinking about leaving? Tears spilled over her cheeks now, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. I felt like I was drowning, my chest heavy with betrayal. I don't know what I feel, she said, her voice breaking. I love you, but there's been this distance between us, and when Nathan and I started talking, it felt easy, like I could be myself again. Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, all I could do was stare at her, my mind a chaotic mess of anger, heartbreak, and confusion. How did we get here? I took a shaky breath, trying to steady myself. So what now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Are you choosing him, or are you willing to fight for us? She looked at me, her tears glistening in the dim light. I don't want to lose you, she said softly, but I don't know how to fix this. The weight of her words pressed down on me like a crushing wave, threatening to pull me under. I don't know how to fix this. Her voice echoed in my head, blending with my own doubts and insecurities. This wasn't just about Nathan. It was about us. The cracks in our foundation that neither of us had wanted to acknowledge. I sat on the edge of the bed, my head in my hands, trying to collect my thoughts. My pulse was erratic, my breathing shallow. I had to say something, but every word felt insufficient, every sentence inadequate to capture the storm inside me. Finally, I looked up at her, my voice steadier than I felt. If you don't know how to fix this, then we need help. Professional. Help. Counseling. Therapy. Something. Because I can't go on like this, Emily. Not with this doubt hanging over us. She stared at me, her eyes wide, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. Counseling, she repeated, as if testing the word on her tongue. Yes, I said firmly. If you want to fight for us, like you said, then we need to do it together. But I can't do this alone. I need to know you're willing to try. That you're willing to be honest, even if it's hard. Her shoulders sagged and she exhaled shakily. I don't know if I'm ready for that, she admitted. Talking to a stranger about this, it feels terrifying. Terrifying? I said, my frustration seeping through. Emily, this is our marriage, our life. If you're not willing to face this, then what's left? What am I supposed to do? Just sit here and wait for you to figure it out? Her lips trembled, and she wiped at her eyes. I'm not saying no, she said softly. I just need to process everything. This isn't easy for me either. I stood then, pacing the room, my movements sharp and restless. It's not easy for me either, Emily. Do you have any idea what it felt like to read those messages? To sit here and wonder if the woman I love is slipping away from me? Her tears fell freely now, and she buried her face in her hands. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice muffled. I never wanted to hurt you. Then stop hiding, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Stop running from this. If there's even a chance we can fix what's broken, we have to try. But I can't keep pretending everything's okay when it's not. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. Do you think we can? She asked, her voice trembling. Fix this? I don't know, I said honestly, my chest tightening. But I know I love you, and I know that love alone isn't enough. We have to work for it, and that means being honest. It means facing the hard truths, no matter how much they hurt. She nodded slowly, her fingers twisting the edge of the blanket. Okay, she said finally, her voice barely audible. I'll try. I don't know what it'll look like, but I'll try. Relief and uncertainty washed over me in equal measure. This wasn't a resolution, not even close, but it was a start. A fragile, tentative step toward something better, or toward an inevitable end. Then we start tomorrow, I said, my voice firmer now. We find a counselor and we lay it all out there. No more secrets, Emily. If there's any part of you that wants to make this work, you owe me that much. She nodded again, her tears still falling, but her gaze meeting mine with a flicker of something. Hope, maybe, or determination. Okay, she repeated, her voice steadier. No more secrets. The next morning, the air between Emily and me was heavy but different. It wasn't the tense, unspoken weight of suspicion anymore. It was the fragile, tentative weight of possibility. We had agreed to try, and that single decision had shifted. The atmosphere, even if only slightly. I spent most of the day researching therapists, scrolling through endless profiles and reviews, trying to find someone who seemed like the right fit. It felt clinical and impersonal, like I was shopping for a solution to a problem that was anything but straightforward. By the afternoon, I had narrowed it down to 2 options. Both specialized in couples counseling and had good reputations. I showed Emily the profiles when she got home from work. "What do you think?" I asked, handing her the tablet. She looked at the screen, her expression unreadable. "They both seem fine," she said quietly. "I don't know how to choose." I could hear the hesitation in her voice, the reluctance to fully commit. "We can start with one," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "If it doesn't feel right, we can try the other. The point is, we need to start." She nodded, her eyes still fixed on the screen. "Okay, let's do it." The first session was harder than I'd imagined. Sitting in a softly lit room across from a stranger who watched us with calm, unblinking eyes felt both invasive and oddly comforting. Our therapist, Dr. Harper, was a middle-aged woman with kind but piercing eyes, the kind that made you feel like she could see right through you. "So," she said after we'd exchanged pleasantries and introductions, "what brought you both here today?" I glanced at Emily, hoping she'd speak first, but she didn't. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, her gaze fixed on the floor. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "We're struggling," I said finally. "There's been some distance between us, and some trust issues." "Can you be more specific?" Dr. Harper prompted gently. My chest tightened. The words felt heavy, but I forced them out. "I found messages on her phone, from someone else. They made me question whether she's been honest with me." Dr. Harper nodded, her expression calm, non-judgmental. "Emily," she said, turning to her, "how do you feel hearing him say that?" Emily's head snapped up, her eyes wide and brimming with unshed tears. "I feel ashamed," she said softly. "I didn't mean for it to get this far." I wasn't trying to hurt him, but I wasn't honest, and I've been struggling to figure out what I want. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, even though I'd heard them before. Hearing her say it in front of someone else made it feel more real, more raw. Dr. Harper nodded again, her gaze shifting between us. "It sounds like there's a lot of pain here, and also a lot of uncertainty, but the fact that you're both here today shows that you're willing to try. That's a good start." The session continued with careful, probing questions, some directed at me, some at Emily. Dr. Harper encouraged us to speak openly, to name the emotions we'd been avoiding. It was excruciating at times, laying bare our fears and resentments, but it also felt like the first real step we'd taken toward understanding each other in a long time. When the session ended, we left the office in silence, walking to the car without speaking. It wasn't until we were halfway home that Emily broke the silence. "I'm scared," she said, her voice barely audible. "Me too," I admitted. She looked out the window, her fingers fidgeting with the strap of her bag. "But I want to try." "I meant that." "So do I said, and for the first time in weeks I felt a flicker of something I thought I'd lost. Hope. The counseling sessions became a rhythm, an uneasy dance of vulnerability and guardedness. Some days it felt like we were making progress, rediscovering pieces of each other we'd forgotten. Other days, it was like ripping open wounds we weren't sure would ever heal. One session began with Dr. Harper asking a question that caught me off guard. "Emily," she said, leaning forward slightly, "can you tell me one thing you admire about him? Something that makes you grateful for him even now?" Emily's eyes flicked toward me, then back to the floor. She was silent for what felt like an eternity. "I admire how patient he's been," she said finally, her voice trembling. "Even when I've hurt him, he's stayed. He's fought for us." Her words hit me like a jolt, unexpected, raw. I'd been so consumed by my own pain that I hadn't considered how she might see me through all this. Dr. Harper turned to me. "And you? Can you share something you admire about Emily?" I hesitated, my throat tight. She has this way of lighting up a room," I said slowly. "Even when things are hard, she can make people laugh, make them feel seen. That's part of why I fell in love with her." Emily's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in weeks, I saw something in them that wasn't guilt or sadness. It was gratitude. But not every session brought such moments. There were times when the walls between us felt insurmountable. One session, in particular, spiraled into chaos. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Why did it take me finding those messages for you to admit something was wrong?" Emily bristled, her hands gripping the armrests of her chair. "Because I didn't know how," she shot back. "You were so focused on work, on everything, but us. Every time I tried to talk, you brushed me off." "That's not fair," I said, my anger bubbling to the surface. "I was working for us, for our future. I didn't know you felt this way because you never said anything." Dr. Harper held up a hand, her voice calm but firm. "Let's pause for a moment. This isn't about assigning blame. It's about understanding why things happened the way they did." Her words helped us simmer down, but the tension lingered long after the session ended. On the drive home, the silence between us was deafening. "I feel like I'm losing you all over again," I said quietly, my hands gripping the steering wheel. Emily looked out the window, her voice barely audible. "I feel the same." Her admission was like a knife to the heart, but it also lit a fire under me. If we both felt that way, maybe there was still something worth fighting for. The breakthroughs came in unexpected moments, like when we revisited the night she met Nathan for coffee. "It wasn't about him," she admitted during one session, her voice shaky. "It was about feeling seen, feeling like I wasn't invisible anymore." Her words stung, but they also made something click. I had been so focused on my own pain that I hadn't considered hers. "I don't want you to feel invisible," I said, my voice breaking. "I never want that." It wasn't a resolution, but it was a beginning. The breakthrough came on a rainy afternoon, during a session that started like so many others. The weather mirrored my mood, gray and heavy. But something shifted that day. Dr. Harper asked a question that seemed deceptively simple. "Can you both tell me about the happiest moment in your relationship? A time when you felt truly connected?" I glanced at Emily, unsure if she would answer first. She sat quietly for a moment, her hands folded in her lap. Then she spoke. "Our first anniversary," she said softly, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "We went hiking in the mountains. It was just the two of us, no distractions. I remember sitting on that rock overlooking the valley, eating the sandwiches we'd packed. It wasn't fancy, but it felt perfect, like nothing else mattered. But us." Her words brought the memory rushing back, vivid and warm. I could almost feel the crisp mountain air, hear the rustle of leaves in the wind. "I remember that," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "You kept laughing at me for how bad my sandwich looked, and I couldn't stop watching you because you looked so happy." She glanced at me, her eyes softening. For the first time in what felt like forever, I saw the woman I fell in love with, not the guilt-ridden version of her I'd been living with lately, but the vibrant, radiant Emily I'd adored from the start. Dr. Harper smiled gently. What made that day so special for both of you? Emily answered first. We were present. There wasn't anything pulling us apart, no work, no stress, no distractions. It was just us. I nodded, my chest tightening. We didn't need anything else, I added. We were enough. Dr. Harper leaned forward slightly. What's stopping you from finding that again? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Emily and I exchanged a glance, and for the first time it felt like we were truly seeing each other. I guess. I've been so focused on what's wrong, I said slowly, that I forgot what's right. I forgot why we started this journey together in the first place. Emily's voice trembled as she spoke. And I've been so afraid of losing you that I didn't realize I was pushing you away. The room fell silent, but it wasn't the strained, suffocating silence of before. It was a quiet filled with understanding, with the fragile beginnings of something new. Dr. Harper nodded. Connection doesn't happen by accident. It's something you build moment by moment. You've both acknowledged what you've lost, but you also remember what you had. That's a powerful foundation to rebuild from. That night, as we sat on the couch at home, I reached for Emily's hand. She hesitated for a moment before intertwining her fingers with mine. We should go hiking again, I said, breaking the silence. She looked at me, her eyes shining with a mix of hope and uncertainty. I'd like that, she said softly. It wasn't a grand gesture or a sweeping resolution, but it was a step, a small, meaningful step toward finding our way back to each other.